My name is Regina Martin, and I'm 35. I used to think the worst thing that could happen in a marriage was falling out of love, slowly, quietly, the way people drift apart without noticing until it's too late. I was wrong. The worst thing, the thing that splits your reality clean in half, is realizing the person you share a bed with has been studying you, testing you, learning how quickly you'll apologize for things you didn't do, how easily you'll doubt your own memory if they tilt their head and say, "Are you sure?" And then hearing them say, out loud, like it's a punchline, "She's the dumbest woman I've ever met." He didn't know I was standing there when he said it. He didn't know I was recording. And he definitely didn't know what I was about to do next. 8 years ago, I met Adrian at a friend's birthday party on Memorial Day weekend. One of those perfect spring afternoons where the air is warm but light, where people laugh like life has never once betrayed them. My friend Jake's wife had invited half the neighborhood. There was a cooler full of beer, a grill smoking in the corner, and cornhole boards set up on uneven grass. I was grabbing a drink when Adrian walked into the backyard. He looked normal. Not flashy, not trying too hard. Just a guy in jeans and a simple shirt, smiling like he belonged wherever he stood. He laughed at my dumb joke about warm beer, like I'd just delivered stand-up comedy. We talked for 3 straight hours, sitting in cheap plastic lawn chairs while everyone else played games and yelled over music. He told me he worked part-time at a boutique downtown, one of those men's lifestyle shops selling overpriced cologne and perfectly folded shirts. He said he liked talking to customers, liked helping people feel confident. It sounded harmless, even sweet. No red flags, not a single one. We started dating not long after. Normal relationship stuff. Movies, dinners, lazy Sunday mornings, learning each other's weird habits. He met my parents, I met his. And that's when I met Holly, his sister. Holly was loud, chaotic. The kind of woman who made every room feel smaller because she took up all the oxygen. She laughed too sharply and looked at people like she was already bored of them. But families are families, right? You don't marry a person, you marry the whole ecosystem. After 2 years, I proposed. Nothing fancy, just a weekend in the mountains and a ring I'd saved for. Adrian cried, said yes, called his mom immediately. We got married 6 months later. Small wedding, close friends, close family. It was a good day. I remember standing there thinking I was the luckiest woman alive. After the wedding, I bought a house, a decent 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood. I work in IT management. The pay is good, not insane, but comfortable. The mortgage was manageable. We had enough left over for vacations, hobbies, and the occasional splurge. Adrian kept his part-time job mostly because he wanted something to do during the day. We didn't need the money, but he liked having his own thing. I trusted him completely. That matters. I trusted him with my money, my home, my future. When we signed a prenup before the wedding, I thought it was just smart planning. Protect what we each brought in. Keep things clean if, God forbid, something ever went wrong. My lawyer recommended it. Adrian's parents even suggested it, like it was mutual and mature. Looking back, I realize how perfectly he played it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. For 6 years, everything was fine. Better than fine. I had no reason to doubt him. No reason to question anything. Then, about 8 months ago, something shifted, subtle at first. Like a crack in glass you don't see until the light hits it just right. Adrian started getting distant, always on his phone, tilting it away when I walked by. If he was texting and I entered the room, he'd flip the screen down like it burned his hand. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he was planning a surprise. Maybe he was venting to friends. I'm not the kind of wife who checks phones or demands passwords. Privacy matters, even in marriage. Then he started coming home late. The boutique closed at 6, but he'd roll in at 8 or 9 with vague explanations about inventory or helping a difficult customer. Sometimes he smelled like cologne, but not his, something sharper. When I asked about his day, he'd give clipped answers and change the subject. Here's the part that still makes me feel stupid. I didn't immediately assume cheating because it felt too cliché, too obvious. Adrian cried at sad movies. He got excited about new kitchen gadgets. Cheating felt impossible. I figured he was stressed. Maybe his mom's health, maybe Holly's constant drama. So I gave him space, tried to be supportive without pushing, asked if he was okay, told him I was there if he needed to talk. He'd smile, kiss my cheek, and say, "I'm fine, Reg, just tired." The distance got worse. We stopped having sex, completely. Months went by. If I tried to initiate, he shut it down. Headaches, exhaustion, not in the mood. And when I finally tried to talk about it, he snapped. Not everything is about sex, he said one night, voice sharp. Maybe I'm exhausted from working and dealing with the house while you're gone all day. It made no sense. I handled most of the house, but I didn't want to fight, so I swallowed it. Then he started going out more with Holly. Sibling nights, he called them, 2 or 3 times a week. He'd actually put effort into his appearance again, something he hadn't done for me in months, and disappear until midnight. Holly had always been a problem. 2 years younger than Adrian, never held a job longer than 6 months. Divorced twice by 32, both marriages ended because she cheated. Both times she played the victim. She always needed money, always had a crisis. And Adrian always defended her. She just needs support, he'd say, handing her cash like it was nothing, letting her crash on our couch, letting her eat our food and complain about her life without ever saying thank you. The tension escalated. Adrian started picking fights over nothing. I loaded the dishwasher wrong. I forgot to text when I left work. I breathed too loudly while he watched TV. Everything I did annoyed him. When I finally asked what was going on, he looked at me with a coldness I didn't recognize. There's nothing wrong with me, he said. Maybe you're the problem. I didn't know what to do. The man I married had turned into someone else, and I didn't know why. Then, on a random Tuesday afternoon, my entire world collapsed. I left work early with a migraine so bad, my boss told me to go home before I threw up on my keyboard. I pulled into the driveway around 2. My car, for once, was quiet. Nobody heard me arrive. I walked in through the garage, keys fumbling, already picturing a dark room and a cold pillow. That's when I heard Adrian's voice from the kitchen. He was on speakerphone, and Holly was on the other end. I froze in the hallway, one hand still on the doorknob. Something in his tone, too light, too amused, made my stomach tighten. Then he laughed. Not the laugh he gave me. A cruel, ugly laugh I'd never heard in 6 years. God, Holly, he said. She's the dumbest woman I've ever met. I can snap at her over nothing, and within an hour she's apologizing like she committed a crime. It's pathetic. My blood turned to ice. I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing. Holly cackled. I still can't believe you got her to sign that prenup, and she thought it was her idea. Yeah, Adrian scoffed. But now it screws me. If I file, I get nothing. The house is in her name. Assets are protected. 6 years stuck in this marriage, and I can't even cash out. I felt like I'd been punched. Holly lowered her voice. So the cheating plan still works, right? Absolutely, Adrian said. North Carolina cares about infidelity. If I can prove she cheated, the prenup gets messy. Alimony. Maybe the house. My lawyer already confirmed it. My mouth went dry. And you're saying she cheated with me? Holly asked, almost excited. It's perfect, Adrian said. You're my sister. Makes it worse. We'll say it's been going on for months. I thought I was going to throw up. Holly laughed. What about Brianna? His voice softened instantly. Brianna has no idea I'm married. She thinks I'm single. We only meet at her place or hotels. It won't trace back to me. There it was. Not just betrayal, but a full double life. And a plan to destroy me with a lie so twisted it made my skin crawl. When do we do it? Holly asked. Next month, Adrian said. I'll stage a huge fight. Throw her out. File immediately. She'll be so shocked and guilty, she'll agree to anything just to make it stop. Then he added smugly, Women are so easy. Holly replied, laughing. Especially this one. They kept talking. Fake texts, fake tears, cleaning out the bank account the day before filing. They talked about me like I was an ATM with legs. I backed out of the house without a sound, got into my car, and drove until I ended up sitting in a grocery store parking lot staring at my hands like they belonged to someone else. 6 years. 6 years of marriage. And he was going to accuse me of cheating with his own sister to steal my home. The rage came later. Right then I felt cold, empty, focused. Because in IT, when a system crashes, you don't panic. You gather evidence. You map the breach. You fix the problem. And I had just identified the malware sleeping in my bed. I wiped my face, took a breath, and whispered to the empty car. Okay. Then I pulled out my phone. And I called a lawyer. If there's one thing I learned that day, it's this. Shock doesn't scream. Shock goes quiet. I didn't cry in that grocery store parking lot. I didn't yell. I didn't call anyone. I sat there for almost an hour, hands on the steering wheel, breathing like I was underwater, replaying every word I'd overheard until they stopped sounding real. By the time I drove back toward my house, I had already made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Adrian. Not yet. Confrontation would feel good for about 30 seconds. Then he'd deny everything, flip the script, accelerate his plan, and file first. He already had a lawyer. He already had Holly rehearsed and ready to lie under oath. What I needed wasn't rage. I needed proof. So I went home that night and kissed my husband on the cheek. I asked about his day. I smiled, and something inside me hardened into steel. The next morning, I called in sick. Not because I was physically unwell, though I felt hollow, but because I needed to think. I needed to move carefully. First call, a lawyer. Not our family lawyer. Not anyone Adrian had ever met. I searched specifically for firms that handled high-conflict divorces and asset protection. When I finally got one on the phone, a woman with a calm, unhurried voice, I didn't give details at first. I asked questions, hypothetical ones. What if someone is planning to fabricate evidence of infidelity? What if recordings were made inside a marital home? What if there's a prenup with an infidelity clause? She paused after that last question. Then she said, North Carolina is a one-party consent state. If the recordings are legal and authentic, they can be devastating. Devastating. I made an appointment for the next morning. Then I went on Amazon. I bought a voice-activated recorder disguised as a pen. $200, 20-foot pickup radius, clear audio, small enough to slip into a pocket or leave on a desk unnoticed. Worth every cent. I checked the delivery date like it was a countdown. That night, Adrian came home late again. He smelled like that unfamiliar cologne. He barely looked at me when I asked how work was. Busy, he said. Inventory. I nodded like I believed him. Inside, my stomach churned. For the next few days, I became exactly who Adrian thought I was. Oblivious, accommodating, apologetic. If he snapped, I softened. If he criticized, I listened. I played the role so well it made me nauseous. Meanwhile, the recorder arrived. I tested it in my home office, whispered across the room, played it back. Crystal clear. I started carrying it with me, leaving it in rooms Adrian frequented, slipping it into my pocket when Holly came over, leaving it on the kitchen counter like it was junk mail. North Carolina law was clear, and my lawyer confirmed it in person the next day. Conversations inside my home, where I was a participant or owner of the space, were fair game. Everything I did was legal. Within a week, I had hours of audio. Adrian on the phone with Holly, refining their story, practicing his confused husband voice, laughing about how guilty I'd look. At night, I lay next to him listening to his breathing, wondering how someone could rehearse ruining another person's life and still sleep so soundly. That was the hardest part, not the anger. The intimacy. The way he'd casually reach for my hand on the couch after plotting my destruction. The way he'd complain about dinner while planning to accuse me of cheating with his own sister. I stopped eating much. Food tasted wrong. I stopped sleeping well. Every sound felt sharp. And still, I didn't break. Then came Brianna. Finding her was almost insultingly easy. Adrian reused passwords like he reused lies. His laptop opened with the same code he'd used for years. I told myself I was just checking email one afternoon while he was out with Holly. I found calendar entries marked with a single letter, B, deleted messages and backup files, photos he'd forgotten to wipe. Brianna was 34, worked as an account manager, lived about half an hour away. Her social media was public and painfully earnest. Pictures of dinners, smiling selfies, comments from friends asking how long they'd been together. A comment from her mother asking when she'd finally get to meet her special girl. My stomach dropped. She had no idea. To her, Adrian was a single man with a quiet life and commitment issues she didn't know about me. Didn't know about the house. Didn't know she was sleeping with someone who planned to frame his wife for a crime. She wasn't the villain. She was collateral damage. And that made me angrier than anything else. I sent her nothing. Not yet. My lawyer advised patience. Timing matters, she said. You want maximum impact. Meanwhile, Holly became bolder. She started coming over while Adrian was at work, sitting at my kitchen table, drinking my coffee, looking at me with that sharp smile. You look tired, Regina, she said one afternoon. Everything okay? I smiled back. Just work. She nodded like she knew something I didn't. If only she knew. By the second week, Adrian started escalating. He picked fights deliberately, accused me of being distant, cold, unavailable. You've changed, he said one night. You're not the same woman I married. I almost laughed. Instead, I looked down. I'm trying. He softened, just a little. Hook set. My lawyer reviewed the recordings, organized them, time-stamped them, backed them up. One copy stayed with her. One went into a cloud account Adrian didn't know existed. One went to my best friend, Jake, who'd agreed to store it without asking questions. This is one of the clearest cases of conspiracy I've ever seen, my lawyer said during our third meeting. If you filed today, you'd win. But, I said, I want more. She raised an eyebrow. I want them caught fabricating the evidence. On record. She leaned back slowly. That's risky. I know. The longer you wait, the more time he has to file first. He won't, I said calmly. He told his sister his timeline, next month. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but be careful. I was already planning the trap. I stopped trying so hard. I came home quiet, distant. When Adrian asked what was wrong, I said nothing, in a way that clearly meant something. I let tension build. I let him believe I was slipping, exactly as he expected. And right on schedule, he took the bait. 2 weeks later, Adrian told me he'd be working late again. I nodded. And that morning, I called in sick. I parked my car down the street, and I slipped back into my own house like I was the one having an affair. The recorder was already running. From my home office, door cracked just enough, I listened. Adrian and Holly in my bedroom. My bed. I heard drawers opening, fabric rustling. Holly's voice. Mess up the sheets more. It has to look believable. Adrian. Hold on, let me take the photo again. Cry harder. They laughed. They staged texts from a burner phone. Talked about hotel receipts. Practiced lines. An hour of pure, undeniable fraud. I sat there, hands shaking, but my voice recorder steady. When they finally left, I waited 30 minutes. Then I walked into my bedroom, and I took my own photos, exactly as they'd left it. Then I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. We're ready, I said. File. The moment I said the word file, something inside me finally exhaled. For weeks, I'd been living in a holding pattern, smiling when I wanted to scream, apologizing when I wanted to burn everything down. Now, the plan had crossed the point of no return. My lawyer didn't waste time. I'll have the papers drafted tonight, she said. We serve him at work. Public. Clean. He won't see it coming. Good. I wanted him blindsided. That night, Adrian came home late again. He tossed his keys into the bowl by the door like nothing in the world had changed. Hey, he said, brushing past me to grab a drink. I watched him from the kitchen, studying the ease with which he moved through my house. My space. The audacity of it made my teeth ache. How was work? I asked. Same as always, he shrugged. Inventory hell. Liar. I nodded and turned back to the stove. He stood there for a second, like he wanted to say something, then thought better of it. That was the thing about Adrian. He always assumed he had time. The next morning, I went to work like everything was normal. At exactly 10:42 a.m., my phone buzzed. Lawyer. He's been served. I pictured it instantly. Adrian standing behind the boutique counter, maybe folding shirts or pretending to be busy, when a stranger approached and asked his name. Adrian Cole? I imagined the confusion, the slow read, the color draining from his face. My hands were steady as I typed back. Me. Thank you. The calls started less than 5 minutes later. 1, 2, 5, 10. I let them ring. By lunch, I had 14 missed calls and 6 voicemails. I didn't listen to a single one. I waited until evening. When I finally answered, I did it calmly. What the hell did you do? Adrian shouted. The mask was gone. No charm, no softness, just panic. I filed for divorce, I said evenly. This is insane. You're accusing me of cheating? He laughed, sharp and brittle. You've lost your mind. Have I? I asked. Because I have recordings. Silence. Pure, stunned silence. Recordings, I continued, of you and Holly planning to frame me for an affair, of you talking about Brianna, about draining our accounts, about staging fake evidence in my bedroom. His breathing changed, shorter, faster. You recorded us? He whispered. Yes. You can't do that. I already did, and it's legal. He started talking fast then. Denial layered over fear. This won't hold up. My lawyer will tear this apart. You're making a huge mistake. Adrian, I said, cutting him off. I also contacted Brianna. That broke him. What? His voice cracked. I sent her proof that you're married. Photos. Dates. Timelines. No, he said weakly. You didn't. I did. She was very surprised. You had no right. No, I said. You had no right to use me as a placeholder while you planned to steal my life. He started crying then. Real tears. Ugly ones. Regina, please, he said. We can fix this. Counseling. Therapy. I was angry. I wasn't thinking. You rehearsed, I replied. That's thinking. I hung up. That night I didn't go home. I stayed with Jake, my friend, the one who'd been quietly holding copies of everything. She hugged me at the door and didn't ask questions. I've got you, she said. The next few weeks were chaos. Adrian showed up at my work. Security escorted him out. He showed up at Jake's place. I called the police. Holly sent messages from burner numbers. Rage, pleading, threats. I blocked everyone. Adrian hired a lawyer, a shark, the kind who smirks during introductions and talks about technicalities. My lawyer played one recording in response. The smirk vanished. At the first hearing, the judge listened to 5 minutes of Adrian and Holly laughing about how stupid I was. Her expression hardened. "Do you understand," she asked Adrian, "that what you're describing here constitutes conspiracy and perjury?" His lawyer tried to object. The judge shut him down. "I've heard enough. The prenuptial agreement will be enforced in full. Mr. Cole will vacate the marital home within 30 days. He is entitled to personal belongings only." Holly went pale in the gallery. The judge continued, voice colder now. "This matter is being referred to the district attorney for investigation of fraud and conspiracy." The gavel came down. I didn't look at Adrian as I stood. I didn't need to. Outside the courtroom, my lawyer exhaled. "That went very well." "It's not over," I said. And I was right. 3 weeks later, at 10:17 p.m. on a Wednesday, someone pounded on my front door. I checked the camera feed on my phone. Adrian stood on my porch. He looked nothing like the man I married. Thin, unshaven, eyes sunken, wearing sweatpants and an old hoodie like he'd given up on being seen. I opened the door, but I didn't step outside. "Please," he said immediately. "Regina, please, you have to drop this." "I can't," I said calmly. "The DA is involved." "I'll lose everything," he whispered. "I could go to prison." "You should have thought about that before you tried to frame me for a crime I didn't commit." Holly appeared behind him then, stepping into frame like a shadow. "This is your fault," she snapped. "If you'd been a better wife." "A better wife would have been easier to rob?" I asked. She surged forward, rage flashing. Adrian grabbed her arm. "Stop," he hissed. "You're making it worse." They started arguing. Right there, on my porch. Accusations flew. Who came up with the plan? Who said what? Who talked too much? Holly shoved Adrian. He stumbled off the step and shoved back. Suddenly, they were screaming, grappling, years of resentment exploding into fists and hair pulling on my front lawn. I called 911. "2 people are fighting on my property," I said calmly. "They're becoming violent." The police arrived in 6 minutes. They separated Adrian and Holly, both bleeding from scratches, both trying to blame the other. One officer looked at me with something like pity. "These the 2 who tried to frame you?" "Yes." "And now they're fighting on your lawn?" "Yes." He shook his head. "You can't make this stuff up. They were arrested for disturbing the peace." As the squad cars drove away, still echoing with shouting, I stood on my porch and felt nothing. Inside, my house was quiet. Safe. Mine. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night. The house felt different once they were gone. Not emptier, cleaner. Like air after a storm. I woke up the next morning on my own couch. Sunlight cutting across the living room floor, and for the first time in months, my chest didn't feel tight. No knots, no dread about footsteps in the hallway or the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Just quiet. That quiet didn't last. The district attorney's office moved faster than I expected. Apparently, cases involving fabricated evidence, planned perjury, and financial fraud don't come across their desks every day, especially not with hours of recordings, timestamps, and corroborating evidence. They called me in for a deposition. I sat in a beige room with bad lighting and a recorder on the table and walked them through everything. The overheard call, the staged bedroom, the burner phones, the prenup angle, the attempt to drain accounts. I didn't cry. I didn't dramatize. I just told the truth. The assistant DA nodded a lot, took notes, asked precise questions. At the end, she looked at me and said, "You did exactly the right thing." That sentence mattered more than I expected. Adrian tried to contact me one more time after that, through his lawyer. He wanted a deal. He'd vacate quietly. He'd waive any remaining claims. He just wanted me to reconsider cooperating with the DA. I told my lawyer to respond with one sentence. My client is not interfering with an active criminal investigation. Translation, no. Brianna reached out around the same time. Her message was long, apologetic, shaken. She said she'd had no idea, that she felt sick realizing she'd been used to hurt someone else, that she was willing to testify if needed, provide messages, timelines, anything. I told her the truth. That wasn't your fault. She cried on the phone. We never spoke again after that, and I didn't need to. Some people pass through your life only to show you where the rot is. The divorce was finalized quickly. The prenup held, ironclad, exactly as Adrian had feared. I kept the house, the accounts, every asset protected by that document he'd once bragged about manipulating me into signing. Adrian walked away with his personal belongings and a 30-day notice. Nothing else. Then came the criminal case. Holly took a plea deal. She testified against Adrian in exchange for probation and community service. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd helped plan the lie, then saved herself by telling the truth too late. Adrian went to trial. I didn't attend. I didn't need to sit in a courtroom and watch the man who once called me the dumbest woman alive realize his own voice was about to put him away. My lawyer kept me updated. Convicted. Fraud. Theft. Restitution ordered. 18 months. Permanent criminal record. When she told me the sentence, I thanked her and hung up. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. But it became mine again. I changed the locks, painted the bedroom. Threw out the sheets they'd staged like props. I took a few months before dating again. Therapy helped. So did silence. So did relearning how it felt to trust my own instincts without apologizing for them. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about how close I'd come to losing everything, not because I was careless, but because I was kind. Because I assumed love meant safety. I know better now. The house has gone up in value since then. I've gone up in value too. And every once in a while, when someone jokes about being too nice or too trusting, I smile to myself. Because I know the truth. They thought I was stupid.